I returned to my $1.9 million home, a brownstone I'd worked myself to the bone for in Boston's historic Beacon Hill, only to find my brother Michael's entire family unpacking boxes in my living room, and that's when I calmly told them, $12,000 a month, with deed. The look on my mother Linda's face, which only moments before had been plastered with self-congratulatory smugness, was the first thing I noticed draining away, like cheap wine down a sink. This wasn't just a drop-in or a misunderstanding. This was the culmination of 2 decades of being the family's punching bag, the quiet earner they assumed would always roll over. I had flown home from a high-stakes 9-month corporate assignment in Dubai, exhausted but triumphant, only to walk into the worst kind of family ambush. The original plan was simple: land at Logan, grab a ride straight to my newly renovated sanctuary, and crash for 24 hours before calling my parents. But my intuition, honed over years of dealing with their passive aggression, screamed otherwise. Something felt off when Michael hadn't responded to my pre-arrival text, and the key code I'd given my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, to check on the place, had been changed. I used the emergency backup key, a detail they, in their arrogance, had forgotten existed, and stepped out of the September heat into the cool, marble-floored foyer. The air immediately felt wrong. It smelled like cheap synthetic vanilla and day-old pizza, a scent signature Michael and his wife Laura had perfected. I walked toward the living room, and that's when I saw it. My custom-built bookshelves were gone, replaced by Michael's oversized, threadbare sectional. Laura was attempting to wrestle a hideous ceramic duck lamp onto my antique side table, and my brother Michael, the self-proclaimed golden boy who had never bought his own decent suit, was struggling to mount his giant flat-screen television on the wall I had specifically painted a soothing oyster white. Their 2 kids, 8-year-old Ethan and 6-year-old Chloe, were running wild, bouncing off the pristine white sofa I'd imported from Italy. "What in the actual hell is going on here?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of the emotion I was desperately suppressing. My travel wear, a crisp black silk blouse and tailored trousers, felt like armor. Michael fumbled the remote, his face turning the color of a faded brick. "Sarah, you're early. We didn't expect you for another week." He recovered quickly, defaulting to the entitled charm he always used on our parents. "We were just getting settled in. Mom and Dad thought it was a great idea, while you were abroad, to finally give us the space we needed. You know, with the kids and everything. Our little 2-bedroom condo in Southie was just getting too cramped." Before I could even process the audacity, my parents, James and Linda, practically burst through the back door, carrying a plastic platter of store-bought apple pie. The setup became sickeningly clear. They weren't just asterisk and asterisk my house. They had staged a simultaneous family gathering to trap me. "Honey, you're home!" Mom chirped, her eyes wide, attempting a hug that I swiftly sidestepped. "It's perfect, isn't it? We decided as a family that since you're never here, and Michael is finally trying to scale his consulting business, this beautiful home of yours should serve a real purpose. It's about family support, Sarah. Michael needs this." My father, James, chimed in, equally placid and convinced of their moral superiority. "We need to support your brother, Sarah. You're single, you're comfortable, and you barely spend 6 months a year in the country. It's the Christian thing to do." I looked from my father, who once told me a woman's success was measured by her husband, to my mother, who had secretly drained my college fund to bail Michael out of a failed tech venture a decade ago. To Michael, standing there in my $1.9 million home as if he'd earned it. They had moved into my life, my dream, my financial asset, without a single call, email, or text. The cruelty was surgical, designed to make me feel powerless and selfish for even protesting. They thought they had me cornered, relying on years of emotional conditioning and guilt. They thought they'd won, but I had an ace up my sleeve, a secret weapon crafted over months of silent planning. I slowly dropped my sleek leather duffel bag onto the floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. I reached into my shoulder bag and pulled out two crisp, official-looking documents, a deed of trust and a professionally printed, legally binding rental agreement. "Let's be clear, Michael," I said, my voice cutting through the thick air, colder than a Boston winter. "This isn't a favor. This is an asset, a $1.9 million asset that I bought and fully own. And since you and your family have chosen to occupy it without my consent, the situation changes from an invasion to a tenant-landlord relationship, effective immediately." I slid the documents across the imported marble counter Laura was using as a serving station. Michael picked up the rental agreement, his brow furrowing as he scanned the bold print. "What is this? Stop trying to be dramatic, Sarah." "I'm not being dramatic," I replied, allowing a faint, shark-like smile to touch my lips. "I'm being a landlord. The current market value for this property, furnished in this zip code, is $14,000 per month. But since your family I put a subtle, vicious emphasis on the word, I'm offering you a 15% discount. $12,000 a month, due on the 1st. Here's the deed, confirming ownership. Sign the agreement, or you have exactly 48 hours to vacate and restore the property to its condition prior to your unannounced occupation." I paused, letting the figure, $12K a month, sink in, a sum Michael had never earned in a quarter. I was playing chess while they were playing checkers, and this was just the opening move. This moment changed everything, and they had no idea the financial and legal hell I had prepared for them. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The silence that followed my declaration was so absolute you could hear the distant traffic rumble down Beacon Street, a contrast to the total, internal collapse happening in my family's collective mind. Michael's jaw was practically on the floor, and Mom was frantically trying to catch my eye, attempting to launch her standard-issue guilt trip. She looked like a ship that had just hit an iceberg, all the color draining from her face as she realized I wasn't the docile little sister they'd left behind. 12,000 asterisk? Michael sputtered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "Sarah, that's insane. That's more than my entire business pulls in right now. Then you should reevaluate your business model, shouldn't you?" I countered smoothly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream or cry. Years of sitting in high-level M&A meetings had trained me to deliver brutal news with the emotional detachment of a stone carving. The market doesn't care about your need, Michael. It cares about value, and this house is valued, and its maintenance costs are high. You either respect the value or find housing that fits your current cash flow. It's the American way, isn't it? Dad finally stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, a gesture I instantly shrugged off. "Sarah, don't be like this. It's Thanksgiving weekend. You're embarrassing us. This is about us, your family. We were just trying to help Michael get a leg up." "Help Michael?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Help Michael by stealing my primary residence and disrupting my life? That's not help, Dad. That's entitlement, compounded by theft. If you wanted to help him, you could have co-signed a loan on a house he could actually afford. Instead, you orchestrated a brazen takeover of my $1.9 million investment while I was on another continent earning the money to pay the mortgage and taxes on it. And Michael, you went along with it. You, the perpetual victim, are now the thief. Now, the choice is simple. Sign the lease, or I initiate immediate removal proceedings. And trust me, you don't want to see what my legal team can do to your credit score." That last part, the mention of a legal team, made Laura, who had been silently fuming, finally drop the ceramic duck. It landed on my Turkish rug with a soft thud, thankfully not breaking. She knew Michael's business was built on shaky credit lines. "You're really going to throw your own brother out on the street?" she whispered, her voice laced with the judgmental indignation that only the truly guilty can muster. "No, Laura," I corrected her, picking up the rental agreement and tapping the eviction clause with a perfectly manicured nail. "I'm going to enforce the law on a trespasser. Whether you end up on the street or in a more modest apartment is entirely up to Michael's immediate decision-making abilities. My legal team is already on standby. They know exactly where we are and what your current status is. You have until Tuesday morning. If the agreement is unsigned, the notice to quit will be served at 9 a.m. sharp. I turned, leaving them standing amidst their boxes and their stunned silence. The sheer injustice of their smug faces, their absolute conviction that my success was simply a resource pool for their mediocrity, fueled a cold fire inside me. I didn't bother to unpack my bag. I drove straight to the luxury hotel suite I had quietly booked months ago, anticipating the need for an emotional fallout shelter. I knew the moment I walked into that house that I had just declared war. The fight wasn't about the $12,000. It was about reclaiming my life, my identity, and my financial autonomy from the people who had always treated me as less than. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't a temporary measure. It was the final, decisive blow against 2 decades of systemic family favoritism. The Boston brownstone wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was the physical manifestation of my hard-won independence, a beacon I had aimed for since I was a kid growing up in the stifling conformity of suburban Texas. Our childhood in Austin was defined by a single, unshakable truth. Michael was the sun, and I was the satellite. He was the golden boy, the charismatic extrovert with the potential. I was the quiet, straight-A student, the one who kept her head down and got things done. When Michael needed $10,000 for a dubious summer internship in Silicon Valley, Dad tapped my college savings without a second thought. "You're smart, Sarah. You'll get scholarships," he'd said dismissively, effectively telling me my effort and planning mattered less than Michael's fleeting ambition. And he was right. I did get scholarships. I worked 3 jobs through college at the University of Texas, taking on every grueling finance internship possible, while Michael cruised through a liberal arts degree funded by the family investment. The true cruelty, the defining moment that cemented my resolve, happened during my graduation party. I had just earned my MBA from Wharton, graduating at the top of my class with a job offer from a prestigious private equity firm in New York. We were having a casual backyard potluck, burgers and chips, in Austin, and I was trying to talk to Grandpa George about my job. Michael, who was still finding himself and living rent-free in a property my parents owned, loudly interrupted. "Don't bore Grandpa with your numbers, Sarah," he'd scoffed, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's the accountant, Grandpa. She just crunches numbers. My business idea? That's the real American dream. Disruption, you know? Sarah's path is the safe, boring one. She's too scared to take a risk." My mother, Linda, had laughed, giving Michael a loving pat. "He's right, honey. You're our rock, Sarah, the sensible one. Michael is the star." It was a public, cutting humiliation, delivered with a smile and a platter of deviled eggs. They reduced my years of sacrifice, my sleepless nights, and my financial genius to boring number crunching while elevating Michael's vague, failed endeavors. That moment changed everything. I realized they wouldn't stop. They didn't respect me or my accomplishments. They only saw me as a highly efficient resource for Michael's endless needs. I packed my bags for New York City and never looked back, pouring my energy into my career. I became the youngest female managing director in my firm's history, specializing in complex asset management and international finance. I lived modestly, invested ruthlessly, and in 2021, I paid cash for the Boston brownstone. It was a statement, a $1.9 million monument to my independence, purchased with money they had no claim to. The planning for my countermove started 6 months prior, not when I walked into the house, but when I received a chilling email meant for Michael. I was working remotely from London at the time. Mom had accidentally included me in a chain titled Phase 2, Sarah's House. The email detailed their entire conspiracy. Michael was struggling, his latest venture had failed, and his condo was facing foreclosure. Mom and Dad, desperate to protect their star, had proposed he move into my Boston house while I was on my long international assignment. Linda wrote, "Sarah is so disconnected she won't even notice for 6 months. We'll just tell her it's a temporary arrangement, and by the time she gets back we can pressure her into letting Michael stay. We can even tell her we'll start paying her a small rental fee. A token. Just to keep her happy. She's too much of a coward to fight us legally." The email also mentioned a contingency. Michael and Dad were trying to locate an old power of attorney document I had signed years ago when I first moved to New York, giving Dad temporary control over some utilities. They were hoping to twist it to claim they had the right to manage the property on my behalf, potentially even setting up a long-term lease for Michael themselves. I didn't panic. I went cold. I immediately called David Chen. David wasn't just a friend, he was a brilliant, cutthroat real estate and corporate law attorney I'd met during a major deal in Chicago. He was Chinese-American, known in the legal community as a quiet assassin, a man who preferred facts over theatrics, and who was very, very rich. He was the powerful third party I needed. "They're plotting grand larceny via emotional guilt, Sarah," David had summarized over a secure line. "It's bold but legally flimsy. Your ownership is unencumbered, but we need to close every single loophole they think they have." My plan became three-pronged: financial, legal, and operational. ***. Phase 1. Financial lockdown. ***. I immediately created a holding company, Miller Asset Management, MAM, a single-member LLC in Delaware. I then executed a clean deed of trust transferring the property's title from my personal name, Sarah Miller, to MAM's ownership, effective immediately. This instantly neutralized any old power of attorney Dad might find. Legally, the house wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to a corporate entity, making any family claim or personal liability moot. It also gave me an ironclad legal defense against squatting. My family wasn't dealing with their boring accountant sister. They were dealing with a Delaware corporation. ***. Phase 2. Legal trap. ***. David and his firm drafted the necessary documents. The new deed of trust, the corporate lease agreement, the $12,000 a month one, and the formal notice to quit, all tailored for Massachusetts eviction law. The lease was a masterpiece of legal ruthlessness, including clauses that made Michael and Laura personally liable for any structural damage and a mandatory credit check. The $12,000 figure was the key. It was high enough to ensure they couldn't possibly sign it, forcing the eviction, but low enough to demonstrate to a judge that I had offered a legitimate, albeit unaffordable, rental option, disproving any claim that I was acting arbitrarily or maliciously. I was the reasonable landlord. They were the financially irresponsible trespassers. ***. Phase 3. Operational evidence. ***. I had all of my communications, the original email chain, their smug replies to my generic updates about my extended stay, and even recordings of phone calls where Mom had heavily implied Michael would be using the house as a temporary office, meticulously archived. I even had the locksmith send me a signed statement confirming they had changed the locks on the property at Michael's request, providing the exact date, which was 2 weeks before my scheduled return. This was proof of conspiracy and intent to deprive me of my property. I returned to New York from Boston that evening and met David at a classy, anonymous spot in the financial district. We sat in a private booth, surrounded by other finance sharks in power suits, and I sipped an expensive glass of Cabernet. "The documents are served, Sarah," David confirmed, reviewing the pictures I'd taken of their faces. "They know the price, and they know the clock is ticking. They think I'm bluffing, David. They think I'm too weak, too family-oriented, to actually file the eviction. Then they're about to learn what happens when they mess with a managing director who specializes in complex corporate structuring," he said, giving me a rare, genuine smile. "They tried to use a low-level power of attorney to pull off a multi-million-dollar real estate fraud. That's amateur hour." The next few days were a blur of cold calls and email exchanges. Mom tried to schedule a series of heart-to-hearts, potlucks, coffee at a Starbucks near my old place. All designed to wear me down. Sarah, honey, you need to understand this is ruining Michael. Linda cried over the phone, her voice thick with the practiced melodrama I had endured for years. His credit is being checked by your company. Whatever that is. He's going to lose his business loan. You're his sister. I am the sole fiduciary of Miller Asset Management, Mom. I corrected her, using my corporate voice. The company has a legal obligation to protect its assets and mitigate risk. Michael, by illegally occupying a corporate property and failing the mandatory credit check, presents an unacceptable risk. You wanted me to be responsible and sensible. Remember? This is what that looks like. I'm minimizing loss. But family, she wailed. Family, I echoed. Did Michael or Dad consider family when they were plotting to steal my house? Did they consider my future, my financial security, or the 8 years I worked 16-hour days to afford that house, while Michael was busy failing to pay back the loan you gave him using my college fund? You messed with the wrong daughter, Mom. You raised the accountant, but you taught me to be the executioner. The confrontation was draining, but exhilarating. I was shedding the skin of the sensible Sarah and stepping into the role of the calculated businesswoman they had inadvertently created. I was no longer the girl in the backyard whose success was dismissed as boring. I was the one holding the deed of trust and the eviction notice. Michael finally called, skipping the charm and going straight to impotent rage. You're sick, Sarah. You're cold. You only care about money. I'll tell everyone what a heartless monster you are. The whole family will disown you. Go ahead, Michael. Spill the tea. I challenged, leaning back in my hotel chair, looking out at the glittering NYC skyline. But before you go viral, remember that Miller Asset Management has a public relations team and, more importantly, a mountain of evidence showing your premeditated conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. You're welcome to trash talk me, but the court of public opinion, and the actual court, tends to favor the person with the unencumbered deed and the paper trail of betrayal. Your choice. I hung up without waiting for his response. The sense of control was intoxicating. They were terrified, and I was just getting started. The final phase of my plan was about public justice. I couldn't just evict them silently. The rest of the extended family, the aunts, uncles, and cousins who had always enabled Michael and implicitly supported Mom and Dad's favoritism, needed to see the truth. The Miller family had a long tradition of sweeping Michael's failures and their own cruelty under the rug, relying on Sarah the scapegoat to keep the peace. Not this time. I instructed David to schedule the formal eviction hearing in Boston Superior Court for the following week, simultaneously preparing a concise, fact-based statement for a local community news site that often covered Beacon Hill real estate disputes. I wasn't going for tabloid drama. I was going for factual, public documentation of their behavior. My revenge wasn't loud. It was surgical and irreversible. It was about destroying the narrative they had carefully constructed about me and Michael. The day of the final confrontation arrived, not at a formal courthouse, but at the brownstone itself. I had strategically chosen the hour, 9 a.m. on a Monday, when Michael should have been scaling his consulting business, and the neighbors would be heading out for their morning coffee runs. I didn't go alone. I drove to Boston with David Chen. He wasn't there as my lawyer, but as a witness and, more importantly, a silent display of powerful external support. David, impeccably dressed in a custom-tailored suit that screamed old money and legal victory, stood beside me as I used the emergency key one last time. Inside, the atmosphere was chaotic. Boxes lay half-packed, and Michael was frantically talking on his phone, clearly trying to find a lawyer who could mount a defense in less than an hour. Laura was wiping down a kitchen counter with an expression of martyrdom, and my parents were seated at the dining room table, looking small and defeated, the fake cheer gone. "The 48 hours have elapsed," I announced, walking into the living room. David stood slightly behind me, his expression neutral, radiating expensive legal power. It's 9 a.m. Michael, you failed to sign the rental agreement, and Miller Asset Management is now initiating its notice to quit and accompanying eviction suit. Michael slammed his phone down. You brought a lawyer? Sarah, this is insane. I'm your brother. You're going to spend thousands of dollars on a lawsuit just to spite me? Actually, Michael, David is here as a friend and advisor to my corporation, which owns the house, I clarified. And the cost of filing is negligible compared to the $1.9 million asset you tried to steal. Spite is cheap, Michael. Justice is expensive, and you're about to pay for it. Mom burst into tears, the last desperate throw of the guilt card. Don't do this, honey, please. We'll talk to Michael. He'll move out. Just give us a week. Please don't destroy our family. You destroyed the family when you plotted this, I stated, my voice steady. You valued Michael's temporary comfort over my life savings and my sense of safety in my own home. You chose him. I accept that choice. And now I'm accepting the consequences for you. I pulled out the ultimate piece of evidence, a small, sleek digital recorder. For the record, and for the court filing, I have documented the past 3 weeks of calls, emails, and conversations, including Mom, your detailed plan to pressure me, and your admitted attempt to misuse an old power of attorney. This isn't a fight over rent. It's a criminal conspiracy, and David is here to ensure that every necessary step is taken, including filing a police report for attempted fraud and trespass. Michael went white. He knew the power of attorney stunt was a bridge too far. You wouldn't, he choked out. You'd ruin Dad's reputation. He's a deacon at the church. He was also the person who signed off on the email chain, I countered, my eyes burning with years of suppressed rage. I am not here to ruin Dad, Michael. I'm here to enforce justice. He chose to participate in a fraudulent scheme. His reputation is collateral damage of his poor choices, not my vengeance. David finally stepped forward, his voice a low, authoritative rumble. Michael Laura, my client, Miller Asset Management, has filed suit this morning. As of now, you are officially in possession of a legal summons. You are mandated to vacate the premises within 24 hours, and your access to the property has been legally revoked. Any attempt to re-enter or interfere with the locksmith scheduled for tomorrow morning will be met with immediate police intervention and an additional charge of obstruction. This isn't negotiable. You need to leave now. The weight of David's authority, the legal jargon, and the undeniable presence of the summons broke them. Michael looked like a child who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and he started throwing his remaining boxes into plastic bags. As they awkwardly hauled their children and their belongings out to their dilapidated SUV, Mom tried one last time to appeal to the good old days. Sarah, we love you. We just thought you understood the importance of *family*. I looked at my mother, the woman who had always prioritized her image of Michael as the successful son over my actual, tangible success. I understand family perfectly, Mom, I replied, my voice hard. I am the family member who bought a $1.9 million house. I am the family member who maintained a perfect credit score. I am the family member who learned to stand up for herself. And I am the family member who just secured her asset against the selfish entitlement of her own flesh and blood. You taught me the value of money and the cost of trust. Consider this lesson learned. I watched them drive away, their SUV overflowing with cheap furniture and shattered dreams. The sense of liberation was absolute. It wasn't the satisfaction of revenge, but the profound clarity of finality. The chapter of Sarah Miller, the family resource, was officially closed. The financial and social consequences for Michael and my parents were swift and brutal. The attempted property takeover, once it became a documented public court case, destroyed Michael's credibility. His business loan was immediately recalled, as the lender deemed his financial stability and integrity compromised. The court ruled swiftly in my favor, granting immediate possession and ordering Michael to pay the legal fees and damages for the initial trespass. I was granted every cent. David had ensured the legal framework was flawless. My parents, faced with the loss of their golden son's only shot at success and the public humiliation within their church and community, my carefully worded factual statement made sure of that, had to contend with the truth. They tried to rally the extended family, but I had prepared for that too. I sent a quiet, private email to my sympathetic Aunt Laura, a friend, not Michael's wife, a beloved figure in the family, with a simple document attached. The original email chain where Mom and Dad openly discussed exploiting my good nature. That was all it took. The enablers saw the full extent of the cruelty. The family fracture was total, but the fault line was clearly marked by my parents' and brother's greed. With the brownstone secured, I shifted my focus entirely to my self-reconstruction. I realized my corporate finance job, while lucrative, was still a safety blanket. The act of fighting my family had awakened a ruthlessness and focus I never knew I possessed. I decided to leave the private equity firm, using the equity from the now-rented Boston house, at the market rate of $14,000 a month, fully secured by a high-end corporate tenant, to found my own boutique financial consultancy, Miller Strategies. My new mission was simple: help strong independent women secure their financial autonomy through smart asset management and corporate structuring, protecting them from the very kind of entitlement I had faced. David Chen became my primary legal counsel and a trusted paid advisor. 6 months later, I was sitting on the rooftop terrace of a sleek office building in downtown Seattle, overseeing the final launch of Miller Strategies' new West Coast operations. I was wearing a vibrant teal power suit, the antithesis of the conservative black and gray I'd worn for years. The air was cool, smelling of coffee and sea salt, and the view of the Puget Sound was breathtaking. David sat across from me, reviewing the quarterly projections, which were already exceeding expectations. "You took a $1.9 million house that was a source of drama and turned it into a $14,000 per month revenue stream and the seed capital for a multi-million-dollar business," he observed, pushing a pair of reading glasses up his nose. "Not bad for a boring accountant." I smiled, a genuine, unfettered smile that reached my eyes. "They taught me that the only family you can truly rely on is the family you build for yourself, David. And the only person who can truly protect your American dream is you." I thought back to the initial shock, the rage, and the cold, calculated planning. I had taken my shot and rebuilt my life from the ground up, not just surviving the betrayal, but monetizing it. The city lights twinkled around us, a vast, glittering landscape of opportunity. I wasn't the satellite anymore. I was the star. I raised my glass of sparkling water toward the neon glow reflecting off the Space Needle. "To Miller Strategies," I said. "The last laugh is always the most profitable."